Thank you all so much for coming today. I am really excited to be together because Hand in Hand is at an inflection point as an organization. And we are poised to bring our supports to parents and health professionals and educators at a significantly bigger scale in this next year. And we'd love to have your support and involvement in taking this next big step. So the plan we have set is to dramatically increase the number of people we serve directly. So through personal contact with a hand-in-hand instructor, whether that's through our 6 and 8 week introductory classes or through our moderated community, the parent club, or ultimately in following years in our 10-month instructor training program, where people become part of Hand in Hand's large web of teaching and support. So the new way in which we are reaching exponentially more children and families is to connect with early childhood educational communities like preschools, pre-K programs, Head Start and early Head Start, home visiting programs. And these are places where so many of the important adults in a child's life come together at an absolutely crucial time for children. So our model of support looks like parents in the community taking our starter classes, and educators, program administrators, home visitors taking our Foundations for Educators course, and nurses, social workers, counselors, physical therapists taking our professionals intensive. And that there's a strong homeschool partnership where teachers are helping parents get connected with us, and parents are supporting teachers in bringing the hand-in-hand tools on board in the classroom. So we've actually been doing all of the components of this work for a long time, and individual people in their families and communities have been doing transformative work. But they've not always been able to benefit from the power of doing that work within a supportive community. And we've heard over and over, most recently from the educators who participated in our research study, that it's an entirely different experience for teachers when teaching teams or teachers and administrators get to learn and practice the hand-in-hand tools together. And ultimately, it's an entirely different world for children when all of the important adults in their lives have access to these tools and supports. So I want to share just a glimpse of what that can look like. So a few years ago, Ahava and I did a day-long training for a Head Start program in Massachusetts. This was during an in-service day where the entire program shuts down for professional development training. And we introduced everybody to the hand-in-hand tools. So there were administrators, food services staff, nurses, teachers, bus drivers were all there. And a few weeks after the training, I heard from their director who wanted to share the impact of our visit. And one of the things she shared was a brief story about one of their 4-year-old students. So for weeks before the training, this student had had lots of big feelings pretty much every day, leaving the program at the end of the day. And so a teacher would walk her to the bus down this long hallway, and she would usually cry the whole way past the administrative offices and the front desk. And the teacher would typically, try and move her along kind of cheerfully, supportively to the bus. But after the training, the teacher decided to try some stay listening. And we had suggested that when feelings come up, it's helpful if you can just pause right where they begin and listen. So one afternoon, she stopped with this girl at a bench at the beginning of the hallway, which was just outside the finance department. And the teacher described one of the finance people popping their heads out of their office and giving a little supportive wave and mouthing, "Ah, stay listening." So what happened is that the teacher stay listened for a few minutes for a few days, not super long actually, but after those few days, that child was walking pretty easily to the bus and actually saying goodbye to people as she left. So that in and of itself is what can happen with even simple, short use of the tools. And that was pretty significant for that child and that teacher. But the thing that I find so heartening about this story is the experience of the teacher. She did not have to keep feeling badly about not being able to help her student. And she didn't need to feel judgment from other staff members or supervisors or worry about that, like, oh, why can't she help that child regulate themselves, or just sensing irritation from the disruption. She got clear support and appreciation from her colleague as she was trying this new approach. And that is what really makes all the difference for everybody in a community. So in thinking about this kind of impact that Hand in Hand can have on a wider scale in educational communities, I want to start by acknowledging the current situation, particularly in the context of the really cascading mental health and educational crises that have arisen out of the COVID-19 pandemic. And you are likely already aware of the dramatic educational crisis we're in right now, with teachers leaving the profession, programs chronically understaffed, the remaining teachers stressed beyond where they have ever been, and ultimately children who are coming into school with bigger feelings and behaviors as they are trying to process and heal from the residue of these really challenging times. So, I mean, that is pretty widely acknowledged, but I also think it's important to look at our current situation in light of a long-standing crisis in education that predated the pandemic and has only been exacerbated. And that is our educational system's reliance on harsh and exclusionary discipline. So particularly in the US. So you may be aware of the disproportionate rates at which children from historically marginalized communities are actually incarcerated as the downstream effect of these harsh school disciplinary policies. And you've probably heard people talk about this as the school to prison pipeline. But I want to talk about where that starts, because it's really the preschool to prison pipeline. And this is due to something you might not have heard so much about, and that's the shocking rates of exclusionary discipline, so expulsions and suspensions in our early care and education system in the US. So just looking at the numbers, in 1 year, just a few years before the pandemic, it was estimated that over 50